Hi everyone, this is Degenbrecher X and welcome to the 7th episode for Module Review Update. This will cover the module for December and January, although they mashed them together in one patch. This is getting easier and easier because they are slowing down module release as much as they can, so I guess I can put more time into the operator hindsight. You can catch my timely update with the online Google Sheet, and you're welcome to join my Discord for live discussions. With all that said, let's get into the video. We start off with Goldenglow X. The module increases the initial damage with base and drone explosion damage with upgrades. So it starts with higher damage and explosions have a bigger chance to take down an enemy so that the drones switches to the next target. It's tailor-made for her skill 3 where her drones switch between targets more frequently. It doesn't boost her damage potential by a lot, but the efficacy of her dishing out the damage is highly improved. So I'd say this module is more of a quality of life for daily. So on the flip side, when there are less mobs roaming around and GG has to lock on the same target for a prolonged period of time, the value of this module will certainly go down. At this point, the other branch that has a higher damage ceiling and potentially improve her arts-resistant ignore talent may be a better choice. But for now, and considering dailies, this module seems like a pretty solid upgrade to her. Next, we have Degenbrecher X. This is obviously a module dedicated to boosting her healing. The base effect is about healing, and the talent upgrades are about healing. This is good news, to be honest. First, it has a clear vision of where it's directed and perfectly executed. Second, you can now expect another module that is likely to go more out on the offensive side. This module does a very good job of increasing her healing, so 36% more for others and 60% more for herself. Thing is, she already does very good healing during skills without module, so overall it's pretty optional and not very high priority, especially considering a damage-oriented one may be coming next. Next, we have Degenbrecher X, and honestly there isn't much to it. This is a pure damage module for what I consider the best physical damage dealer in all of 2023. Like Typhon, the module contributes to a big part of her strength and damage, so a no-brainer level 3 if you look to maximize that. Also, this is likely the better module for her. The other talent may improve her defense ignore, but that's for the lower limit, not her upper limit like the current one. Let's spend some time to talk about why SWO-X base effect is a better module for Degen and Irene. The 10% more damage dealt is calculated after defense, much like Fragile. So if the operator has defense ignore related talent, they essentially do more damage than operators that don't, thus increasing the number boosted by the base effect. To prove it, it's easy. This is how you usually calculate damage. If you break the bracket, it's gonna look like this. Apply the defense ignore and you will realize that the talent effectively prevents you from losing out more numbers. Less damage deducted, so more damage dealt. Easy. On the other hand, SWO-Y is a worse module than X, also for SWO masters with percentage defense ignore. This is mostly a problem of how defense ignore is calculated in the game, because what they do is that their talent will dilute the base defense ignore stat. It's also very easy to prove. This is how you calculate damage with defense ignore talent, and this is when you also have a base 70 ignore. If you break the bracket and compare it to the original, you actually ignore less than 70 flat. For example, for Irene, who has a chance to ignore 50% of defense, she's only ignoring 35 effectively. So as part of the impact brought by Degenbrecher, I'm updating Irene Y's rating. Module rating from B to B-, and priority from B to B-, and I generally do not recommend the module anymore. First of all, the other module has the better base effect, and second, she hasn't had many notable performances ever since her release. With Degenbrecher arriving, her chance, unfortunately, is not getting any better. For the second modules, we have Lee Y, a damage module. Yes, it was good damage increase for him, but that comes with conditions, and most importantly, nobody is expecting damage from Lee. Certainly not so after we got Swire Alter. Lee is a highly specialized function-based operator revolving around spending DP to do his job. So if you look into the comparison, it's straightforward. Don't join the race you're not supposed to shine. 99% of the time it doesn't work in Arknights. Module X just lets him cost you less overall, and it's all that matters. Recommendation: Module X level 1. Next we have Suzuran Y. If you use Suzuran skill 2 in daily AFK, this is the better module. Not only does she slow enemies longer, which is supposedly her job as a D-cell binder, it also provides a higher debuff with a longer time window for your other operators to do damage. Higher Fragile and the new Enfeeble debuff will both get doubled by skill 3 to make her support power even stronger. But in skill 3, that base effect will become irrelevant, and at the end of the day, it's just 2% more fragile, while 4% more during skill 3. It's certainly meta like herself, but also optional for daily contents. So for comparisons, Module X makes her skill come back faster when it matters, but the upgrades are not necessary, which I think can mean that this module is cheaper for the return. Module Y does improve her core support talent, but each level is equally important, and for max value you need level 3. So both of them are pretty solid upgrades. X is cheaper, Y is stronger. I'm giving the better one to Y for its higher upper limits, and my recommendations are Module X level 1 or Module Y level 3. Next we have Carnelian Y. Well, Y indeed. We talked about wanting her to go all out on the offensive end, but this is just not it. I can kinda get this base effect. It kind of rebalance the backloaded damage pattern for skill 3, but it is unstable in itself like skill 3 and only gives a poor 3% increase when there's just one enemy in the range. Without the range expansion of skill 3, I don't see much impact of the base effect on skill 2 either. Yes, stainless turrets count as enemies, but at that point I would rather use Arc as the second guide instead. The SP recovery on the overcharge looks promising, but it's highly diluted. For skill 2, it's 3.1 seconds faster and 3.3 seconds faster for skill 3. It would have been so much stronger if it was effective on the uncharged state instead. Taunt level decrease is just going back to survival when we wanted that all-out offensiveness. Overall, this could potentially be a good addition if we use her in the upcoming permanent RA for mining. Let's just hope that it's not Irene and IS-3 again. As an update, even though the last one didn't make her deal more damage, it at least gives her good improvement on the survival end. And in the current stage of the game, maybe her best shot for playtime would be resorting to skill 2 crowd control, maybe with Arc, along with some decent self-sustain. I don't want to say power creep, but she's definitely very overshadowed by Lin right now, and her CC with skill 2 is the only thing that can keep the competition up. So all in all, considering how to make Carnelian more viable, I'm going to have to recommend her X module more than the newer Y for reasons I just mentioned. My recommendation is Module X level 1 plus or Module Y just level 1 if you are still looking for damage with her skill 3. Finally, to conclude this batch, we have Weedy Y. The key to this module is actually the upgrades. Reducing the base redeployment time for the cannon will make it more resilient against redeployment time debuffs in hardcore contents. Base effect makes it so that she can achieve the 4+4 push force, but for the majority of times, you wouldn't have Weedy block the target you want to 4+4 push. And that will make it extremely complicated to pull off because Weedy usually prioritizes hitting the enemies she blocks with skill 3. Currently, there are two ways to do it. One, use sleep on her blocked enemies. Time the sleep so that Weedy fires this skill 3 projectile at her target. The enemies she blocks wakes up when the projectile is still traveling, whose force is determined in real time. That way she can avoid hitting her blocked enemies while still getting the +1 force. But 99% of the players are never gonna make it. You can also do it by target priority with Todafon's skill 1, but still those are some of the niche-est things you can do in this game. Weedy modules are just very similar to herself. Is she good overall? Yes. Is it going to matter for most players? Not likely. Unless you're a spec nice player, you can get away with not unlocking both of these modules. I would say overall Module X is relatively easier to use and can apply to more players. But really, for dedicated Shifter Knights or hardcore content players, it's just picking the right one based on the context. So I can't really give a definite recommendation. That's gonna be it for this episode. It's a busy month before the Chinese New Year, so good to get this out right before the next batch arrives. Have a good time, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.